Currently, 2019, my preferred method of potting on eucalyptus trees is to pot them on into a mixture of 50% topsoil and 50% horse manure. And I'll just show you what that looks like. Nothing particularly startling here, just as I say, 50% horse manure and 50% topsoil. I then have a plug-shaped dibber. You can pretty much use just a piece of 2x2 to make a hole in the middle. And into that I just pop a few pellets of poultry manure and a tiny sprinkling of mycorrhizal fungi. And then just pop the plug in and firm it down. And I make sure and top up the polypot right to the brim, so when the wind blows and it blows the plug over, it doesn't chafe or cut on the edge of the polypot. And that's that plug potted up. Just to give you an idea of what it looks like there. Whether I'm planting plugs or polypot trees, I plant them a metre apart. And I've got a measure for that, and I plant them, as you can see, in a triangular pattern. So that's a plug, that's a plug. Here's my next hole here. If you're just going to be planting a few trees, and also depending on the state of your ground, then shovels, picks, if you have mechanization, if you have a digger, fabulous. Otherwise, shovels and picks. I'm semi-automated, as it were, and I've got an earth auger, and this earth auger has a 6-inch 150mm auger bit, which is just perfect because that's exactly the size a polypot is when it's full. And likewise, when I'm planting plugs, I just plant them exactly the same way as I pot on the polypots, but they're just being potted on straight into the ground. So I'll just give you a quick demonstration. Nothing particularly astonishing there. 3 holes in the ground. As with potting on the polypots, all I do is fill the hole with horse manure topsoil mix. Make a hole in the middle. A few pellets of poultry manure. Sprinkling of mycorrhizal fungi. Pop the plug in. And firm it down. If I'm planting a polypot tree, then I make sure that the hole is deep enough. And as I say, the earth auger just makes holes just perfect size for these 4-litre polypots. Okay. Okay, that just gives me enough room at the bottom of the hole for a little bit more topsoil horse manure mix. Firm that down. I'm just going to sprinkle a few pellets of poultry manure. Sprinkling of mycorrhizal fungi. And the way you get these polypot trees out of the pot is you roll them. And that'll loosen them. Well, that's perfect. There's a bit of a gap around the sides, and I'm just going to fill that in with horse manure topsoil mix. So one last thing that needs to happen for the polypot tree I've just planted and for the plugs that I've potted on into polypots, and I'll just show you what that is now. My perception before I started this business would be that eucalyptus come from Australia in the main, and for the most part Australia is a hot dry country, and therefore in order for eucalyptus to do well they needed hot dry conditions. I've discovered that quite the reverse is the case for all the hardy eucalyptus I grow here in Ireland. Ireland fortunately is blessed with a reasonable amount of rainfall, and eucalyptus thrive on it. They really do appreciate being moist and well hydrated. So I'm just going to give these a good watering in. In fairness, this is the end of October and the ground is well hydrated, but just to make sure I'll give them a water on. It's not so important at this time of year when there is quite a lot of moisture in the ground already, though generally if I was planting during the summer then I'll leave a small impression, a pot it's called, so that you can water into the pot and the hydration goes directly to the roots of the plant. Generally, polypot trees are large enough to outcompete any surrounding vegetation, though definitely clear the ground first. Plugs, smaller plugs, will need a little bit of assistance, so that's why I've just put this cover around them just to suppress any growth around them initially, and once I take the cover off then I will do vegetation control, and you can pretty much see in this area that I've done that. It is starting to grow back, so I'll come back and do more of it, but generally these plugs are now getting to the stage where they're pretty well established and won't need much in the way of vegetation control. So why horse manure? Well, I have tried several other mediums, but as I'm about to show you, the difference when you plant eucalyptus into horse manure is astonishing. During the end of April, I think it was, Storm Hannah pretty much blew away my polytunnels. And I'd always had it in mind, as I've said in another video, to terrace off this area. And built the wall, no problem with that. Topsoil, that would be quite a lot of topsoil. And I did have some topsoil left over, but the farmers really helped out and gave me loads and loads of horse manure. So these are Eucalyptus gunnii that I planted into that medium as a windbreak, a barrier for the north winds, so that my polytunnels would be protected. And the growth has just been incredible. Not just the fact that they're lush and blue and tall. I've already trimmed these once already. I wasn't going to trim them again till the storms of the winter had finished, but I might end up doing that. But the thickness of the stems is it's just incredible. These trees are about 1.5 years old, and I am personally astonished. I'm going to take the barrier just up around the corner here. So these were polypot trees. Some of the ones at the end here do have a little bit of wind burn from the end of Storm Lorenzo. That's not surprising, that was a pretty fierce storm. Anyway, as I say, I'm taking it up round in a crescent so that my entire polytunnel area is protected. So these plugs, these are polypot trees, and these plugs were likewise planted into horse manure, and again the difference in growth rates and establishment is astonishing. Hopefully you're getting a decent view of that. These have only been in 6-8 weeks maximum, and they're already established. These couple of polypot trees, they were red when I planted them. They're now lush green and getting on with it. At the same time as I planted the hedge at the front of the polytunnels here, I planted these 4 polypot trees. And as you can see, the difference is striking. It's taken them till now to start to become established. The stems are much thinner. Bear in mind they're exactly the same age. The only difference is they've been planted with mycorrhizal fungi and poultry manure. The only difference is these weren't planted with horse manure. I planted these plugs in between them into horse manure later on to firm up the barrier, and as you can see, they've established really quickly. It's probably only since I did that and the polypot trees next to them have had access to the nutrients or whatever it is in the horse manure, nutrients. Maybe the horse manure keeps hydration better, but it's only since I planted those 4 plugs that these 4 polypot trees have really started to establish themselves. A different day here in Ireland, that's for sure. Hopefully that's given you a lot of good information to help you have success when you're planting your eucalyptus trees here in Ireland, and I suspect everywhere else in the world as well. Good luck. Lots of good information about eucalyptus trees here in Ireland on the website boglizard.ie. Good luck.